It was a real surprise to me actually to see the film, because I saw it for the first time last night, and I'd forgotten everything we did. I'd forgotten how experimental we were with the character, and Peter's kept the character really intact and has given him so much clarity, and the great material I was given with that screenplay. And I love it when Pete goes into the abstract, when he takes Thorin to the bottom of the pit of despair, of the sort of disease of his mind. It goes into a very abstract place. But yeah, I'm very proud that we're here in this moment where it's the big finale of Peter's exploration of Middle Earth. I'm very proud. And it runs through all 6 films, this idea that, a man or a being with a good heart that treads a treacherous path and is ultimately taken back to, his redemption through the eyes and the heart of a good man, the Hobbit. And I think Tolkien is really, it's what he believes in himself, or he's aspiring to. I think he's writing himself as Bilbo, that through his experiences of war, that human spirit is the thing that endures, and that going home is one's greatest desire, and that hearth and home is the place where you find your peace. And that's what Thorin sort of says to Bilbo in those last moments. I mean, I was exhausted at the time of shooting it, but watching it, I was even more exhausted. But I understand what Peter was doing. He was pushing me to the point of me being on my knees, because he wanted the character to be spent, the true representation of what war looks like, and what it takes to fight in single-handed combat was something that he was really pushing towards it in the film, and I'm very proud of it. When I see some of those shots and I see the amount of work that it's taken to create what was never there, there was so little of. I mean, when you cut to the close action, all of the fight beats that the dwarves and all of the main characters do, that was all real. But the big epic wide shots are all digitally created, but it feels very real. And the things that Peter really understands and loves about his obsession with the wars, that he connects to Tolkien in that moment. And I think it feels very truthful that he doesn't shy away from violence. I was very familiar with the Lord of the Rings trilogy on screen, but also the book, and I did re-watch those films before I went to film, but I didn't watch them during filming. But having Peter there all the time, he has like a lifeline to them. It feels like he has lived and breathed the work that he does, because he can reference any moment in any film at any time. So he's a sort of an encyclopedia of his own work and Tolkien, and with Philippa and Fran equally immersed in that world, it was a real privilege to have that. Some days we would be ready in costume at 8 a.m, having sat in the chair at 4:30, and at 7 p.m. at night, Pete would knock on the door, or send a runner to knock on the door and say, "Oh, he's ready to shoot you now," and you'd walk onto set and do a head turn and get sent home. That could probably be described as a boring day, but I found so many things to keep myself occupied. There was always something new to read or a piece of music to listen to, just to keep myself in my head, and there was always new script coming in, so you could plan what was going to come next. So very few boring days. Dwalin and I played ping pong in the hangar, so we kept ourselves very busy. And Stephen Hunter and Jimmy Nesbitt were constant sources of fun and amusement. So it was great to have that camaraderie. Yeah, and it's something that is very unique to the way Peter treats the people that work with him. That he doesn't just wheel you on at the last minute to look at to start work. You're involved from the very beginning. So he shows you the sketches of the sets, he shows you the models, he brings you to set to look at how it's being built. So you're involved from the very beginning. So apart from it being a courteous thing, it's very useful to creating your character, to feel that you own, the thing that you're holding or the world that you live in, that you belong there. Yeah, I mean, we trained with each other at the very beginning, the dwarves. We went through quite an extensive period of movement and weapons training. And, I bonded with my stunt double, Mana Davis, who just did the most amazing job. And he helped me to create a way that Thorin would fight. All of the stunt team who, some of the moments in the final movie, we were fighting in a place of very close to being dangerous. So we kind of tried to look after each other so that we weren't injuring each other. But you have to push it so that it looks as dangerous as or it feels as dangerous as it really is. So that creates a camaraderie because you're both out on a limb together. I think the theme that is in my head at the moment is Tolkien driving his story towards a warning about addiction to material, particularly through Thorin. I think that he shows in a fantasy epic tale that wealth and greed is a kind of an infection that causes the mind to become irrational. And I think that was probably true at the time he wrote it. It certainly feels true now, and we should probably pay attention. I think the most challenging moment, and it was the final standoff between Thorin and Azog. I thought I was physically ready, and the first few days I was great, but then it was just so exhausting, and I was doing all sorts of things to try and keep my energy up, and I would throw up between takes and try and, sometimes my legs wouldn't hold me up, but and yeah, as much as that was challenging, when you see it on film, it's exactly as it should look. I was so lucky. I was gifted a sword and the oaken shield, and the map and the key, which to me were very, very personal because I carried the map with me as a personal prop every day. It was always inside of my costume, and it's got my fingerprints on it. So sometimes if I had dirty hands or bloody hands, you can see little bloody fingerprints on the map. So that to me is a very precious piece of prop.